Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is almost turkey time. And so, in honor of that, we are doing a cute little turkey today. It's a lot simpler than it looks. So, if we haven't met, I am Viv. Welcome to Viv with Art. And we're just going to start with the top of the turkey's head and his wattle, that little red thing that kind of hangs down his neck. And just notice I've got a really nice pointed brush. And I'm just taking some sort of a pinkish red and I'm just going in there and getting the texture. I'm just drawing the outline of the texture of the wattle. And this is a pretty watery mix of this reddish color. So it's going to dry really fast. Notice that I am leaving a lot of the white of the paper showing through. I don't want to fill that paper up too fast. I want some of that white because we need a little sparkle in our turkey, even on his wattle. Now, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I am Art with Viv on Instagram. I'd appreciate if you come over there and give me a follow. Now, under his eye, I put a little bit of cobalt teal, and I did the same thing. I left a lot of the paper white. Then for his eye, I did a little bit of black, and it's not really black. It is a mixture that looks like black. Now on his body, I'm just going to go ahead and block in some of the colors. The paper is dry, so we're just doing wet on dry, and I'm not even really that concerned about getting hard edges because we're actually going to paint another layer over this, and that layer is going to hide any hard edges that we might create by blocking in these colors. Now, the reason we want to do that is because turkeys kind of look black. I mean, wild turkeys do. I mean, the turkeys we eat at the store, I think when they farm them, they're white. Their feathers are white. But now these white male turkeys, they are gorgeous. When the sun shines on them, you can see a rainbow of colors. They have golds, they have purples, they have these beautiful teal and sort of aqua green accents to their feathers in the sun, and it's just beautiful. Turkeys are actually a really beautiful bird, especially the males when they're all puffed up trying to find them a female to, swoon over and to kind of woo into making some eggs with him. Anyway, now I'm just darkening up some of those creases on his wattle. That first layer is already dried. I just want to deepen that color. I'm letting a little bit of the paler color underneath shine through. And of course, I'm not covering up every part of the paper. We want some of that white of the paper to shine through to give it that little sparkle. And also, if you notice on the eye, I left a white spot in the center of the eye. That's going to be the highlight. It's really tiny work in there. Now I'm coming in with a really deep, almost maroon-like red, and I'm going right into the creases. Those are going to be my darker shadows for the wattle and the sort of skin on the head, the red head. And also his wattle is covering his beak. We can't really see his beak because that fleshy part is just sort of laid over it. So I just did some texture down that. Now I put a little bit of a darker blue in with my cobalt teal to do some shadows in that blue area right under his eye. Really simple. And I really am liking this turkey. It is nowhere near as difficult as it really looks. When you look at the finished product, the finished painting, it looks like, oh gosh, you just put lots and lots of work. It's really not that difficult. Now I'm going in with a dark mixture. You can use black straight out of the tube. I did not. I am using a mixture that I make my blacks with. Now, if you are wanting to get the outline drawing, the reference photo, some mixing tips, and a longer video, like the step-by-step video, then you might want to consider joining my Patreon. I just started a new Patreon. It's only $5 a month and I only have one tier in it, $5 a month. And for that, you get a whole bunch of bonus content related to my YouTube. It's called the Dabbler tier, and you'll get a video that does the step-by-step. You get the supply pack. You also get monthly coloring pages, just a whole bunch of stuff. You might want to go over there and check that out. I will leave the link below. So now we are back to this beautiful turkey. And all I'm doing is I waited for all of those colors to dry. that gold and the purples and the blues. I got my black mixture, or I'm calling it black. It's not really black. My mixture is a mixture of blue and brown, but you can use tube black. Some people don't like to use tube black because it looks a little bit flat. It's completely, totally, 100% up to you. It's your painting. And then I'm just doing these tiny little C strokes, like these. They're shaped like not even really curly C's. They're just sort of parentheses, like really soft curved paintbrush strokes. And I'm sort of doing those like fish scales, offsetting each one. They're not going in a little row. They're offset from each other, and just really filling in those feathers, making sure that I'm going in the same direction as the feathers. You don't want your feathers growing cattywampus out of your bird, so you have to look at the reference really closely to see how those feathers are sort of laying across his body. And this beautiful boy, he has a bunch of different sections with some slightly different feathers, but they're all laying like flat toward his tail or either down his breast. So to get some darker areas, I'm just making those marks a little bit closer together. That's all you have to do. If you want to darken it up, you can do it in different ways. You can make your your brush strokes really close together and kind of laying on top of each other, and that will darken the area. You can wait for it to dry and do a darker wash just in that area. So there are some different ways you can do that. That's how I'm doing it. I'm just making my brush strokes a little bit closer together where I want it darker, a little further apart where I want it lighter, but I definitely want some of that initial layer of those blues and purples and golds to shine through this black so that it looks like the sun is sort of glinting off of his black feathers, and those colors are shining like a rainbow across his little body here. So that's all we're doing. It's nothing difficult. You just want to look at reference. Whenever you're painting, look at your reference more than you're actually looking at your painting. That way you get the feel of how it's supposed to look. Now, you don't have to copy a reference completely. You're not a robot. Give it your own flavor, your own style. Just use it as a guide. That's what I suggest. Just use it as a guide. Now, you don't have to use the colors that I'm using either. Your turkey can be a completely different color. That's up to you. And I encourage you to experiment and to try out different things, because that is how you learn. You put that brush to paper and you just start painting, and that is the way that you learn. There is something about that signal between your brain and your hand when it's actually doing the work that sort of cements those lessons right in your brain. You can read about it and you can, have somebody show you. You can watch other people do it, but until you actually pick up the paintbrush, dip in some paint, and start painting on the paper, you're really not going to learn anything. You have to learn by doing. Now, his wing feathers have sort of a little checkerboard pattern on them, and I really like his wings. So all I'm doing is dipping into my black, and I'm just doing sort of black bars down each feather, but on the next feather, I am scooting those bars down like a notch so that they're not lined up, and it just looks like he has black lines going across. It looks more like a little checkerboard, and it really adds a lot of texture to this painting. I really like his wings. I don't know why, I like that checkerboard pattern. I like the texture that it gives, and it has a lot of white in it, so it gives your eye a place to rest from all of the color and all of the texture everywhere else. This is a lot more simpler part of the bird, and whenever you paint something that has a lot going on, you want a place where your eye can sort of go to rest. And his wing is doing that for me for right now. So I think that's why I'm just so attracted to this wing. Plus, it's super duper simple. I mean, oh my God. You're just painting little black dots and then in little columns, but you're just making sure the columns aren't lining up side by side and turning into a line. So it looks more, again, like a checkerboard or some corn or whatever. Now, I'm just coming over here to his feet, and that side of his body that's farthest away from us is going to be in the dark. So we're just going with a solid, deep, dark color. We're not getting too fancy with it. We're just almost doing some solid blackish gray color. You can do another layer, make it darker if you'd like. That's up to you. But seeing as how that side is farthest away from us, we're not going to see that much detail on it. So I'm just painting it in pretty much solid, coming back here and there and adding a little bit more pigment where I want just a few darker spots. We're going to do the same thing for that tail or that other wing that's hanging down on the other side of him. We can just barely see the edge, but we're just going to paint it black because it's in shadow. And his leg that's closest to us, same thing. It's under that turkey's wing. That wing is cast in a shadow. There's not a whole lot of light getting to it, so we're just going to make those simple. Now I have went ahead and I mixed a little bit of a Naples yellow with my raw sienna. Naples yellow has just a little bit of white in it, white paint in it to make it more opaque. And I like the way that it makes that raw sienna more buttery. It looks buttery to me. I love that. I love that color. It's one of my favorite yellows. I'm not really a yellow person, but I love Naples yellow. And I especially love it mixed with a little bit of raw sienna. So we're making like the very tip ends of his I was going to say wing, but this is his tail, Vivian. Come on, girl, get with it. We are going to just do the tips of his tail feathers with this yellow. Now, in the reference photo, they look white or really kind of like an off-white, but this is my dang turkey, and I'm painting it the way I want to, so the tips are going to be yellow, and my color yellow, sort of a buttery yellow. And now I'm just going to go ahead and paint over all the tail feathers with this burnt sienna. I really like this color. It's almost it reminds me of cinnamon, and I don't know why that it makes me think of toast, cinnamon toast. I don't know. Maybe I'm just hungry. So I've got those tail feathers done, but I decided that there are some black markings that are like little bars across each feather, and I don't want the under color to be this brown. So all I'm doing is just taking some water with a wet brush, running it over there, and just picking it up with a paper towel. And that's called lifting. If you're new to watercolor, it's pretty easy. If your paint is non-staining, then you can just re-wet it and lift it with a paper towel, and it comes right up. Now I want that underpainting to be blue, the same blue that we used on his face. And then we're just going to paint the black sort of over that. But the blue is just going to act like sort of a highlight for those black markings that are on his tail. And they're shaped like sort of like little bars on each feather, but they almost line up with each other when he spreads his feathers apart like that. So that's, you don't have to have them even, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Now I'm just coming back in here with some blue, and I am going ahead and adding some shadow work in those wings so that those wings are not so stark white. So I just used a really liquidy wash of the blue for the wing feather shadows. Now I'm coming in here on the second row of tail feathers. I'm adding in a little bit more of that burnt sienna. I'm also adding it behind the short tail feathers that haven't grown out long. They're just sort of kind of snug up against his back, between his big tail feathers and his back. And we're just going to add a little darker there. Now I am just going in with the black mixture, and as you see, I'm just sort of going around the edges of those markings on each one of his tail feathers, letting some of that blue that we painted shine through. That's the highlight, and I wanted it to be that blue. And in areas where I feel like there's not enough blue, I'm just going to pick up a little bit of wet blue off my palette and drop it in there, just like that, to give it a little bit more deepness, a little more richness. So we're just going to keep doing that around the tail, on the big tail feathers, and then those shorter tail feathers. He's got 2 rows of feathers for his tail that have these markings. We're going to go ahead, get that done, and that is really simple. There's nothing scary about it. And then once we get that done, we're going to take a deep rich brown, and on each one of those tail feathers we're going to do sort of like squiggly stripes, but we're not going to make them in straight lines so that he looks like he has stripes across his tail. We're doing them in like little wiggles, and some are going to go be curved more upward, some are going to be curved more downward. You just want them to be a little bit varied. You don't want him to have stripes on his tail. It won't look natural and it won't be pleasing to your eye. Now I'm just taking some of that dark brown mixture, adding a few more shadows into that lighter tail feather, those tail feathers that haven't grown out yet. They're just sort of waiting to be, to replace those big tail feathers. They're just starting to protrude from his butt, his bottom. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of fringe, a few little brush strokes to indicate fringe on his feather tips. We don't want them to be too straight and flat because they are feathers, so they should look feathery or fringy. And there we go. We just about got it. We want to anchor him. He looks like he's floating in the sky. We don't need a floaty turkey. So all we're going to do is just wet that area underneath the turkey. And I'm just adding a little bit of purple for the shadow that he is casting. You want to make the shadow darker with a little bit more pigment right under the turkey. And let it get a little bit lighter as it goes away from his body. Now it's going to be really dark right under him, right under his feet, right under his wings, because that's where he's casting the most shadow and the light cannot reach there. So of course it's going to be darker there. So add a little bit more pigment there. You don't have to make your shadow purple. I just did. I thought it would work really nice with the colors we had in the turkey. There you go. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for my Patreon, it's only $5 a month, and I will leave a link below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.